10 years ago, the very concept of money vanished from our world. That day, the goddess of death descended, and everything changed. Since the gods arrived in the mortal realm, time has become the only currency we have left. Attention, everyone, the Reaper is here. The descent is beginning. We ask all citizens to remain calm and refrain from looting any supplies. The Reaper has arrived, and with her, the end of life as we knew it. With only 1 minute left, his own son told him to just go ahead and die. To be honest, it was a cruel way to treat a father. He begged for just 1 day, promising to pay back too, but his time was ticking down to the final 10 seconds. Desperate and refusing to die alone, he watched as the countdown reached its final moments. 3, 2, 1. His time hit 0. He was certain that this was the end of his story. But then, a mysterious system detected that its host was in a critical state. It began the binding process just as he stood on the brink of death. He woke up confused, wondering how he survived, only to find a system that returns any time he spends on women at a high multiplier. The higher the quality of the woman, the better the return rate. As a welcome gift, the system granted him a 12-hour lifeline. It seems he had been given a second chance straight out of a novel, and he swore to make those who betrayed him pay. Even with the system, he knew he couldn't be reckless. He headed to a convenience store, knowing 12 hours wouldn't last forever. There, we see him spot a girl named Lily. She was 19, completely innocent, and possessed a rare, untouched beauty. The system offered a massive 120 times return rate for her. Meanwhile, she was pleading with her boss for her final 15 minutes of pay. The boss, a truly unpleasant man, told her she'd only get paid if she went home with him. He knew she was desperate to stay alive. Suddenly, our protagonist stepped in and struck the man. Lily panicked, thinking he was just another desperate person trying to rob her. She begged him not to take her time, but instead, he spent 2 hours on her, triggering that incredible 120 times multiplier. The system returned 10 full days to him. It hadn't been an exaggeration. He really was getting his time back. He felt like he could live forever. He told the store manager to check his timer before crying. The man panicked, realizing he now owed our protagonist time he didn't have. The manager begged him not to call security, as the fines for theft were literally a death sentence in this world. He was terrified. The man pleaded for help, offering a day's pay as a reward, but our protagonist just watched him suffer. He had no interest in such a small pittance. A little later, he arrived at the city's largest information hub. Before, he was too poor to enter, but now he planned to take everything he could. He spotted a woman named Sylvia, 29 years old. The system flagged her as a low-quality target with a terrible return rate of only 0.7. The system warned him not to be desperate. Suddenly, a bouncer blocked his path, sneering that a single drink inside cost more than his life. The bouncer told him to get lost, but then he saw her, Maya, 21 years old. She had never been recharged by anyone before. The system called her a flame rose and offered a massive 180 times return rate. He couldn't believe his luck in finding such a high-tier target. He approached her and casually handed over a full day as a tip, asking her to show him around. The system immediately detected the transaction. The 180 times multiplier triggered, bringing his total time to over 189 days. Maya was stunned that someone in such rags could be so generous. She wondered if he was a wealthy heir pretending to be poor. To be honest, giving a whole day as a tip was unheard of in this economy. She looked at him with newfound respect and excitement, calling out to him as Sir with a bright smile. She greeted him warmly, asking if he was looking for a seat and why he was standing in the common area. She offered to lead him inside personally. He noticed the bouncer's judgmental gaze and felt a flicker of amusement. He asked if he looked poor, then reached out and dropped another massive tip. He demanded the best VIP booth they had for the night. Maya couldn't believe her luck as he spent time so freely. His only rule was simple. He didn't want the best. He wanted the most expensive. He knew she didn't usually get a commission, so he promised to take care of her. She clarified she wasn't for sale, but he just laughed. The bill came to 14 days. As he paid, the system triggered again, multiplying the 14 days spent on Maya by 180. His total lifespan jumped to nearly 7 years. The club staff bowed, welcoming the man who had just spent more than most see in a lifetime. 10 full days. That was as much as most people could save in an entire year after basic expenses. Maya wondered if our protagonist belonged to some secret, wealthy dynasty she had never heard of. She saw him as her golden ticket, a chance to finally rise above her station. Meanwhile, other women in the club were watching with envy, wishing they had that kind of prestige. One woman looked at her own date with pure disgust. To be honest, if he didn't have a little time saved up, she would have kicked him to the curb long ago. Suddenly, a woman named Sarah froze in disbelief. She couldn't believe the wealthy man sitting there was the same loser she used to know. It simply wasn't possible. She thought he was dead, or at least gone for good. Our protagonist, meanwhile, invited the ladies to sit, promising them 10 hours of time each just for their company. Sarah rushed over, screaming that everyone was being conned. She accused him of faking his death just to avoid spending his precious time on her. He didn't blink, calmly admitting that he was done hiding his wealth. Sarah began to panic, wondering if she had truly made the biggest mistake of her life. A wealthy rival named Leo stepped forward, mocking him for bragging. He challenged our protagonist to a game of dice, simple high stakes where the lowest roll loses. The bet was 1 bottle of high-end liquor per round. The crowd gasped, as a single bottle was worth an entire day of life, a staggering price for a simple game. The onlookers recognized Leo as the heir to a massive corporation. They watched the two titans clash, wondering if our protagonist was just bluffing. Our protagonist just smiled, calling the current bet boringly small. He suggested they let Maya play for him, raising the stakes to 100 days per round with no limit. Maya trembled, terrified that she could never repay such a debt if she lost. He told her not to worry, while Leo secretly laughed, certain he had more time in the bank. Leo warned him that if he couldn't pay up, the consequences would be fatal. Word spread through the club instantly. Two big spenders were gambling with centuries on the line. The starting bet was 100 days. To any sane person in this world, that wasn't just a bet, it was absolute madness. The stakes quickly climbed to 150, then 180. Leo confidently opened his cup, certain of his victory. Leo laughed, seeing he had won by just a single point. He reached out greedily, demanding the time he was owed immediately. Maya apologized through tears, begging him to take over the game himself. He told her to keep going, but then the system gave him a cold piece of news. It turned out that gambling losses didn't count as a gift, so the multiplier wouldn't trigger. He realized he had to be careful, or he might actually go broke. He decided to raise the stakes to a full year. Leo hesitated for a moment, asking if he really wanted to see the dice, but our protagonist didn't even look. He asked Leo if he was still in. Leo laughed, confident that his visible wealth would always trump whatever tricks this newcomer was trying to pull. Leo laughed, mocking our protagonist's reckless style as he demanded the time be paid immediately. The crowd whispered that this newcomer had more time than sense. Sarah watched in a jealous rage, realizing he had been hiding a fortune from her all along. He ignored her, telling Leo to stop talking and keep the game moving. The dice rolled again and again as the tension in the club reached a fever pitch. Leo sneered, swearing that if he rolled a 5, he would take our protagonist's life. The bet rose to 2 years, a staggering amount that made the onlookers gasp. Leo asked if he could still afford to play, and our protagonist didn't hesitate for a second. Leo's advisors begged him to stay calm and look at the dice first, but the madness had taken hold. He raised the bet to 2.5 years, then 3. Suddenly, Leo's confidence wavered, and he asked if he could surrender for half the cost. Our protagonist just smiled. There was no walking away from this debt now. The final bet was set at 3 years, and Leo braced himself to collect. He was certain his opponent couldn't possibly roll a 6, but luck is a fickle thing. To everyone's shock, it was a perfect 6. Leo stared at the table in total disbelief, realizing he had just lost a fortune in a single moment. Leo stammered that he only had 2.5 years left in his account and offered an IOU. Our protagonist laughed, asking if a wealthy heir really intended to beg. He pointed toward Leo's girlfriend, Sarah, suggesting she could cover the difference. Sarah turned pale, pleading with Leo that she had no time left to give. Leo's pride was wounded, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing face in front of the crowd. He remained silent, which in this world was a very dangerous sign. Sarah cried out, reminding him she was his girlfriend, but Leo had already made his choice. He reached out and forcibly began the transfer of her remaining time. Even after taking her time, Leo was still short by a full year. He looked at Sarah coldly, deciding she would have to pay the rest, despite her screams of terror. She begged for mercy, claiming she loved him, but in this high-stakes world, love is rarely worth more than a few hours. He didn't even look at her. Our protagonist collected his winnings, noting that Leo was at least punctual with his debts. He turned to leave, leaving a broken Leo swearing revenge in the shadows. The rush of winning was intoxicating, and he found himself craving even more time. As he walked away, Maya hurried after him, clearly having something on her mind. She nervously asked if he could lend her a single year, promising to pay him back. He paused, reminding her they had only known each other for a few hours. Maya explained she was a management student and offered to be his personal housekeeper to work off the debt. He checked with his system to see if this counted as a gift. The system confirmed it would work, so he offered her half a year's salary up front. He told her they were going to a hotel to test her service, catching her off guard. She stammered that she wasn't ready, but he had already transferred 2 full years to her account. He told her to book the presidential suite and keep the change. He told her he was going to buy a few things first, and that she should just send him the room number once she checked in. A little later, Maya informed him the hot water was ready for his bath. He asked if her management studies actually meant she could run a company. He instructed her to register a company the next morning and pick him up in the afternoon. When she asked if she should stay the night, he gave her a choice. She decided to head home, wishing him a good night and promising to return early. He felt a brief pang of guilt for making his new employee work so hard. He decided to keep focusing on building his value. Meanwhile, we see Maya returning home to her father and younger sister. Her father apologized, lamenting that since her mother passed and his accident happened, he couldn't earn enough time and felt like a burden. Maya comforted him, explaining she found a job where she could earn 6 years of time in just 1. She could finally support the whole family. The next afternoon, our protagonist woke up to beautiful sunshine. Maya called to say she was in the lobby and the company registration was complete. She noted they just had to wait for the license. When she asked about the plan for the day, he told her they were heading to the nearest luxury car dealership. Upon arriving at the dealership, a saleswoman asked what he was looking for. He simply asked for the price of the most expensive car in the building. She pointed out the Apollo, priced at a staggering 1,800 years. He realized that, despite his recent wins, he was still relatively poor. He remarked that the price wasn't bad, but wanted to look around first. The saleswoman, naturally, assumed he was just another arrogant pretender. He asked Maya if she had a driver's license, and when she said yes, he told her he was buying her a car to make her work more efficient. Maya protested that it was far too expensive, especially since she already owed him time. He ignored her, asking the price of a sleek blue model instead. The price was 180 years. The saleswoman snapped, accusing him of being a show-off who had been acting superior since he walked in. He calmly told her to call the manager. She refused, sneering that the manager didn't have time for people who weren't actually going to buy anything. The manager arrived and, though polite, suggested that their prices might be a bit high for his current budget. It was a very civil way of being insulting. Our protagonist noted that the manager was just as judgmental as the staff, despite the polite tone. The manager simply smiled, unfazed by the comment. He pointed to the blue car and told them to process the payment, naming Maya as the owner. The saleswoman watched, waiting for the payment to fail. The system chimed, confirming the transfer of 180 years. Stunned, she realized he actually had the wealth to back up his attitude. The saleswoman snapped, telling him that processing paperwork was nothing special and he should just shut up and let her work. The manager quickly apologized, promising he would punish her for the outburst. Our protagonist wasn't satisfied, demanding that the woman be fired on the spot. The manager hesitated, explaining that while they would issue a punishment, firing her was simply not possible. The saleswoman laughed, mocking him for thinking he was a big shot just for buying the cheapest car in the shop. After all, the manager was her brother-in-law, making her job quite secure. A purchase of 180 years wasn't enough to change the rules, even if the customer is king. He then asked if buying the Apollo supercar would be enough to get her fired. He pressed the manager for a straight answer, which clearly started to annoy the man. To be honest, the manager was beginning to find him quite troublesome. The manager realized that anyone who could actually afford the Apollo was someone he couldn't afford to offend. He agreed that if the payment went through, he would fire her immediately. Our protagonist noted that it all came down to time in the end, mocking the manager's lack of principles. As he paid the 180 years, his system triggered a 30-fold cashback. Suddenly, his remaining time surged to 5,400 years. The dealership's system chimed as it received a massive payment of 1,800 years for the Apollo. The saleswoman, oblivious to the transaction, excitedly asked her brother-in-law who had bought the supercar, already imagining the commission and asking for a car of her own. Instead, the manager told her she was fired and ordered her to leave immediately. She was stunned, assuming her brother-in-law must be playing some kind of joke on her. He wasn't joking, because the man who bought the Apollo was right in front of them. She screamed that he must be lying, calling him a scoundrel in a fit of desperate rage. She threatened to tell her sister as she was ushered out. The manager turned back to our protagonist, now named Marcus, offering his deepest apologies for the unpleasant experience. Marcus remarked that he actually preferred the manager's earlier arrogant attitude. He then told Maya to finish the company paperwork quickly so they could start hiring. Maya asked what the requirements for the new employees would be. He told her there was only one. They had to be women with pleasant appearances from all walks of life. He told her not to reject anyone who fit the description, which made her wonder if he was some kind of lecher. Meanwhile, it seemed his first potential recruit was about to appear. A student named Sophie approached him, ostensibly to return the time she owed. He told her he'd rather have dinner with her instead, though she worried about the cost of such a meal. She felt conflicted, knowing she should be grateful but worried about her dwindling resources. She told herself to stay strong and keep trying to make things work. A classmate named Leo told her he would wait at the school gate to take her to dinner. She teased him, warning him to have plenty of time ready because she had quite an appetite. Marcus asked Maya to drop him off at the school and then head home. He instructed her to look for commercial buildings and luxury real estate, as he was planning to buy a house soon. He worried that this move might be a bit of a loss. He wasn't even sure if having just 1 hour of time left would be enough to cover the cost of a dinner invitation. As Sophie approached the school gate, a voice called out, asking which wealthy family's son had arrived to see her. Marcus stepped forward, asking if she had already forgotten him. He noted she looked a bit different today, before reminding her of their dinner plans. Sophie panicked internally, realizing he was clearly a wealthy heir. She was certain her meager savings wouldn't be enough to cover a meal for someone like him. She hesitantly asked if they could eat somewhere cheap, explaining that she didn't have much time left and needed to save enough to survive. She needed to ensure she could make it through next month. Marcus found her concern quite adorable, jokingly asking if he really looked like such a bad guy. He suggested a simple spicy hot pot instead. As they ate, he asked how things were going with the store manager who had bullied her before. She told him the shop had actually been closed down, which meant she could no longer work there to earn more time. Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. He told her that from the moment they met, he could tell she was a kind person. Sophie's heart raced, wondering if he was about to confess his feelings. She stammered that she wasn't ready yet, barely even knowing his name. She liked him, certainly, but she felt they should take things much slower. Marcus chuckled, realizing she had completely misinterpreted his intentions. He introduced himself properly and mentioned he was starting a new company. He explained that since she was looking for a job, he wanted to offer her a position. Sophie felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. He told her not to worry about the details yet, as she had already passed the interview. Her monthly salary would be a staggering 3 months of time. She was stunned by the high pay, briefly wondering if it was a scam. However, looking at him, she decided he seemed far too decent to lie to her. He promised to send her the office address in a few days. Sophie, eager to start, asked when she could begin and was told her pay started today. She promised to work as hard as possible, then curiously asked how many people were currently employed at this new company. Marcus admitted that, including her and his driver, there were exactly 3 people. Sophie's enthusiasm wavered slightly at the small head count. She couldn't help but wonder if this was actually a legitimate business or if she had made a terrible mistake in judgment. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a father was furiously beating his son for bringing shame to the family name in such a public way. The boy's mother tried to intervene, telling her husband, Mr. White, that he had gone far enough. The father, however, was absolutely livid. Mr. White barked in order to investigate Marcus's background immediately. No one, he declared, would be allowed to trample on the White family's pride. Our story moves to a luxury estate, where a realtor explains that Cloud Palace is the most prestigious district in the country, home to the elite. When Marcus points to a specific villa, the realtor apologizes, explaining that their crown jewel property already has an owner. Everything has a price, though. Marcus tells her to contact the owner, promising a price they can't refuse. She agrees to try, while Marcus notes he only has 5,000 years left. He grumbles about being poor with only 300 years of liquid assets left after the house. To be honest, most people would kill for that kind of poverty. He urges his driver to hurry with the office location, joking that he'll go bankrupt if they don't open soon. The driver is understandably confused by his priorities. The realtor returns, saying the owner insists on a face-to-face meeting before deciding to sell. Marcus finds the request a bit odd, to say the least. She explains the owner is no ordinary person and wants to meet this afternoon. Marcus agrees, suggesting they meet right there in the conference room. He makes it clear that he's a busy man and doesn't have much time to waste on pleasantries. A woman enters, asking who wants to buy her house. She's skeptical, noting Marcus looks far too young to be eyeing the estate's most expensive villa. She asks which of the 4 great families he belongs to. Marcus, unimpressed, tells her that while she's beautiful, she's remarkably rude. He scoffs at the mention of these 4 families, having no idea who they are. His driver pales, whispering that these families are the city's ultimate power. The driver explains they control unimaginable amounts of time. Even the wealthy heir Marcus humbled at the bar wouldn't be fit to shine their shoes. Marcus simply shrugs, unimpressed by their supposed power. The woman, meanwhile, is stunned that anyone would speak so lightly of the city's masters. She quickly changes her tune and apologizes, explaining she thought he was a spy sent by the families to seize her family's remaining assets. Marcus cuts her off, stating he doesn't care about her family or their rivals. He only wants to know if the house is for sale. He tells her not to waste his time. Seeing his extraordinary confidence, she begins to wonder if he's a powerful figure from the capital who could save her. She tells him she can't sell the house just yet, but she has a business proposal for him instead. She suggests that if he helps her family survive their current crisis, she will give him the villa for free. Marcus senses she's quite calculating. He decides to hear her out, but warns her not to play games. The consequences, he notes calmly, would be more than she could handle. She introduces herself as Elena, head of the Phoenix family, which was once the most powerful and sole dominant force in the city. She explains that her family was once a titan, but after her father's sudden death 5 years ago, she was left as the sole heir. The 4 subordinate families began devouring her assets like wolves, and now she's at her breaking point. It's a classic tale of betrayal. Marcus asks what any of this has to do with him. Elena pleads, claiming she only needs 200,000 years to save her family. She promises that if he helps her regain control of the city, both the villa and she herself will belong to him. Marcus, however, hates trouble. He tells her he has no interest in the proposal, but suddenly, his system detects his contact with the Phoenix family and triggers a special mission. The rewards are tempting, a piece of a mysterious map and a permanent combat mastery card. Marcus realizes the system is practically bribing him. He changes his mind, deciding that helping her might be a fun way to pass the time. Elena is overjoyed, but he tells her not to celebrate yet. He promises the 200,000 years in 3 days, but first, he needs an office for his new company and tells her to arrange it. Elena assures him it's a simple task and offers to take him to a prime location immediately. Marcus notes her impressive stats as they head out. She leads him to the Phoenix Plaza, the crown jewel of her family's holdings, featuring a 1,000-square-meter penthouse in the heart of the city. Marcus asks if such a prime location is actually vacant. Elena smiles, admitting there are tenants, but that's a minor detail. She explains that if Marcus wants the space, she will simply have them move out. Meanwhile, a group of thugs is watching Marcus from the shadows. They mock him for wandering around, noting that their boss, Mr. White, ordered them to find an opening to take him out and seize his time. Marcus and Elena arrive at the office, where she demands to see the manager. The receptionist is dismissive, asking if she thinks just anyone can see the boss. Elena doesn't take the insult lightly, telling the cur to inform Mr. White that Elena of the Phoenix family has arrived. The manager's attitude shifts instantly. Mr. White rushes out, wondering what wind blew her in since the rent isn't due for 10 days. He looks at Marcus, finding him strangely familiar. Elena asks if she needs his permission to visit her own property. She then drops the bombshell. She's terminating his lease on the top floor today. She demands they vacate immediately. Mr. White is stunned, offering to pay more rent, but she insists the floor is reserved for Marcus. She promises to pay the contract penalty in full. Suddenly, Mr. White realizes who Marcus is, the man who humiliated his son at the nightclub. Marcus asks who his son is, and White reveals it's the heir he humbled earlier. It seems the world is even smaller than we thought. Mr. White scoffs, claiming he investigated Marcus and found he's just a penniless orphan, certainly not the wealthy young master he pretends to be. Marcus notes that Elena seems to have her doubts too, which is fine by him since her family troubles are quite a headache anyway. But Elena snaps back, telling White that the Phoenix family has no room for retreat and he has no right to insult her guest. White sneers, asking if she thinks her family still holds its old power, but he eventually retreats, cursing them as he leaves. Marcus takes a seat, finally enjoying the feeling of being an urban elite. Elena reminds him she's fulfilled her end of the bargain. She tells him not to forget his promise, and Marcus reassures her to simply return in 3 days to collect the time. She leaves him to his new office, offering the penthouse as a down payment while reminding him to be a man of his word. Marcus checks in with his assistant, Sarah, who confirms the job postings are live and the interviews are ready to begin. He instructs her to schedule the interviews for 8 tomorrow morning, even sending a personal invite to his former classmate, Sophie. Word spreads quickly that the top floor has a new boss, and by morning, a crowd of beautiful applicants has already gathered. As the interviews begin, Marcus scans the room, but the system only shows low return multipliers of 3 and 5 times. Even a 7-fold return doesn't impress him. After seeing a dozen candidates, he hasn't found a single one with a high multiplier. Suddenly, the system flags a candidate with a staggering negative multiplier. He looks up to see a woman who looks like a human tank. She begs for the job, promising she can do anything, but Marcus quickly realizes she isn't exactly the talent he's looking for. Finally, the next group shows promise with multipliers of 78 and 100. He decides to hire them on the spot. He welcomes them to the firm, offering a monthly salary of 3 months' worth of time. The girls can hardly believe the generosity. They whisper among themselves, worried it might be a scam since the boss hasn't even explained what their actual job is yet. To settle their nerves, Marcus decides to pay them 4 months' salary in advance. It's a bold move, to say the least. The credits hit their accounts instantly. One girl even asks for a slap to make sure she isn't dreaming of this handsome, rich boss. Marcus then reveals the plan. They will be a unique live streaming company where they can do whatever they want, and he'll foot the bill. One of the girls, Sophie, speaks up, worried that not every streamer can turn a profit and Marcus is bound to lose everything at this rate. She asks what the budget is, and Marcus simply tells her there is no limit. His only requirement is that everyone starts broadcasting tomorrow. When Sarah points out they haven't even bought equipment yet, Marcus reminds her that with enough time, anything is possible. To be honest, he's not wrong. The girls are swooning over their handsome boss as he leaves Sophie to handle the shopping while he heads home for some much-needed sleep. He reflects on how simple and unadorned life has become. Even if the system only returns 50 times his investment, it's more than enough. A return of 20,000 years of life would be quite a haul, after all. A perfectly ordinary Tuesday for a man like him. But the next day, Marcus is furious. He corners Sophie, demanding to know why the system only returned a measly 10,000 years. The girls are terrified, whispering among themselves and wondering if they spent too much yesterday. They've never seen the boss this angry. They fear the good boss act was too good to be true and that he's finally snapped after just 1 day of spending. Sophie tries to apologize for the high costs, but Marcus cuts her off. He isn't mad that they spent too much. He's mad they spent too little. The girls are stunned. They spent over a century's worth of time in a single day, and he thinks that's a disappointment? It's almost absurd. Marcus decides it's time for a lesson. He tells them to follow him, so he can show them what real spending actually looks like. They arrive at a high-end luxury boutique where Marcus tells the clerk to give every single girl behind him a full set of their products. The girls are in shock, knowing even the cheapest item costs 4 years of life. The clerk warns him the total will exceed 500 years. Marcus pauses, but only to remark on how surprisingly cheap the store is. To be perfectly honest, the clerk didn't expect that reaction. He tells her to stop talking and just swipe the card. He's in a hurry to spend, and the girls can hardly contain their excitement. He wants them to experience the height of luxury, telling them to pick out whatever they want without a second thought. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the girls realize they've hit the jackpot. They start picking out items like they're at a grocery store. Eventually, they reach their limit, admitting they've shopped until they feel physically ill. The world has truly become a place they no longer recognize. Marcus sighs, realizing he's still only halfway to his goal. He suggests buying it all again as spare clothes just as his car arrives. The clerk asks for an address to deliver the goods, and Marcus tells him to send everything to the Feng Ming building while he stays busy. Yes, he's very busy. He turns to the girls and asks if they have driver's licenses, making them wonder what kind of scheme their boss is cooking up this time. Marcus calls his contact, ordering his Apollo hypercar and 20 additional sports cars to be delivered to Caesar Plaza within 30 minutes. The girls stare in disbelief, asking if he wants them to start a ride-sharing service, but Marcus simply wants them to have their own rides. When they suggest taking a taxi instead of carrying everything, Marcus notes that buying the cars is much simpler, a perfectly logical conclusion in his mind. Meanwhile, we see the disgraced tenant, Mr. White, approaching four powerful family heads, looking like a man who has truly reached his limit. The family heads tell him not to be so dramatic, but Mr. White insists that Marcus insulted him and threw him out over a nobody. He begs the four patriarchs to stand up for him after being evicted from the building he called home for years. To be honest, he's desperate. The leaders ask why they should bother helping him, and Mr. White presents a document as his bargaining chip. It is a petition signed by all the businesses in the Fengming building, a collective move to strike against the management. The family heads realize that the building is the only thing keeping Sarah's business afloat, and they see a golden opportunity to strike. They mock Sarah for her self-destructive choices, praising Mr. White for having the ruthless instincts of a true leader. They agree to give him a chance, and Mr. White eagerly asks how he can serve the four great families in their quest. The plan is simple. He must lead all the tenants in a rent strike, and the families will handle the rest of the fallout. If he succeeds, they promise that his family will become the fifth great power in the city, which, naturally, is an offer he can't refuse. Mr. White can hardly believe his luck, marveling at how his fortunes have turned. He promises the patriarchs that he won't let them down. He vows to handle the matter beautifully, convinced that his moment of glory has finally arrived. Later, he calls Sarah to officially announce he won't be paying his rent. Sarah, unbothered, tells him to keep it as compensation for being fired. Mr. White mocks her supposed wealth, hoping she can still laugh in a few minutes. But then, something feels very wrong. He realizes the situation is spiraling out of control. For some reason, the system isn't allowing the time to be recovered at all. Mr. White sneers, thinking that even if Marcus gave Sarah more time, it wouldn't help. He wonders if she likes his little gift to the building. Sarah sighs, accepting her fate and deciding not to drag Marcus into this mess. She calls him, wondering if her little brother is awake yet. Marcus answers, teasingly asking if she called so early because she couldn't sleep without him. In the background, a girl tells him to be gentle. Sarah pauses, wondering if she called at a bad time, but Marcus tells her to keep it clean. He's gathered the 20,000 years for her. He tells her to come collect it, but then changes his mind, asking her to wait in the office while he heads over immediately. Meanwhile, Mr. White rallies the tenants to find that little brat Sarah, promising to make her kneel after years of looking down on them. The crowd cheers, vowing to follow his lead. Mr. White promises that if his family prospers, they all will. And so, the march begins. Sarah is touched, but she insists she doesn't need the 20,000 years anymore. Marcus, however, isn't letting her off that easily. She tells him she doesn't want the time, she just wants to be his. But Marcus is firm about the payment. To be honest, he's quite stubborn. He tells her she's taking the time whether she wants it or not. Sarah is overwhelmed by his kindness, feeling she'd give her life for him. Marcus is just focused on finishing his mission. Suddenly, a mob erupts outside, screaming for Sarah to come out and pay what she owes. Sarah is startled, promising Marcus she'll handle it quickly. But Marcus just smiles. After all, this building is his territory now. He steps out, eager to see exactly who thinks they can come here and run wild on his doorstep. Mr. White declares this is the day Sarah's family falls. He assumes she knows why, because everyone has defected to the four great families. Sarah realizes this is why the tenants are acting out. Marcus looks at Mr. White and the others, asking if they've completely lost their minds. Mr. White mocks Marcus, calling him a lowlife who thinks being Sarah's boy toy makes him special. He claims Sarah can't even save herself now. And yet, Marcus's aura feels strangely more powerful than the four great families combined. Mr. White tells himself it must be an illusion. He threatens that if Sarah doesn't hand over the building, Marcus won't live to see tomorrow's sun. A bit dramatic, even for a villain. Marcus laughs, asking if this is all just about time. He asks how much the four families offered them, because he's prepared to double it. Mr. White scoffs, thinking Marcus is just a delusional kept man. He asks if Marcus even knows who the four families are before showing off his wealth. Mr. White wonders if Marcus has enough to even buy a single center. He scoffs, thinking this boy toy couldn't possibly have more time than the great families. Marcus offers 200,000 years, enough to buy 100 companies. The crowd wavers, realizing that having that much time in their pockets is what truly matters. Mr. White panics, asking them what they're doing and reminding them his family will be the fifth great power. He warns them not to defect now. Marcus ups the ante, promising an extra 10,000 years to the first three people who switch sides. Naturally, a chaotic scramble to be first begins immediately. The tenants shove each other aside, desperate to reach Marcus first. Mr. White watches in horror as his loyal followers abandon all sense of honor for a payday. It seems their alliance wasn't very expensive after all. They claim that while Mr. White was a dear friend, Marcus is offering more time, and that changes everything. We see them admit to being shameless opportunists without a shred of regret. Sarah watches, stunned by the sheer audacity of these people. She thinks Marcus looks incredibly cool in this moment. Mr. White, however, seethes, swearing that the four great families will never let them get away with this. He tells Marcus he's finished because he doesn't understand the true power of the elite. But as he tries to flee, Marcus asks if he really gave him permission to leave. Marcus points out that his territory isn't a public bus where people can just come and go. He orders the crowd to stop them, offering 1,000 years per person. Mr. White's son trembles, asking what Marcus wants. The answer is simple. He wants their lives. To be honest, they probably should have seen that coming. Mr. White calls him an ignorant child, asking if he knows the price of murder. He smugly challenges anyone present to see if they can actually afford to kill him. Marcus's companion warns him that intentional murder carries a heavy price. The victim's assets are deducted from the killer. Furthermore, the killer becomes a legal target for anyone. Anyone who kills a murderer gets to keep all their time without penalty. Marcus smiles, asking Mr. White if he really thought he killed Sarah's rival earlier. He explains that he simply took back the time he had given her. In his eyes, that was just collecting a debt, not murder. A subtle distinction, perhaps. His companion begs him not to be impulsive, warning that with his massive wealth, he'd become a walking bank for the great family's shadow assassins. Mr. White laughs, thinking he's safe. He taunts Marcus, calling him a loser and betting that the rules of this world will keep him alive. Marcus sighs, remarking how tragic it would be if the Whites accidentally fell off the building. Suddenly, the father and son realize their mistake and beg for mercy. They swear they saw nothing and renounce all claims to the time. Marcus calmly explains to the crowd that his conflict with the Whites has reached a point of no return. He suggests that if the Whites happen to fall, he will ensure everyone else lives in luxury. And so, the crowd understands exactly what needs to be done. The son begs for his life, promising to be Marcus's loyal dog from this day forward and to bite anyone he is told to. Mr. White echoes the sentiment, swearing his own loyalty. Marcus tells them to remember those words, take their time, and leave, warning that any traitors will be next. And just like that, the White family is dealt with. We see the system deduct the cost of removing those two troublemakers. It turns out they were worth over 30,000 years. His companion, Sarah, worries he was too impulsive, as the four great families will surely strike now. She wonders how on earth she can protect him and bring him home safely after such a bold move. She insists there must be a way, telling Marcus she doesn't want him to die, especially since they haven't even started dating yet. Marcus remains calm, calling it a minor situation. He teases her, asking if she really wants to date him, which, to be honest, is a strange thing to focus on right now. Sarah is exasperated, asking how he can call a life-and-death crisis a minor situation. Marcus simply offers her another 200,000 years. He asks how long it would take her to reclaim all of her family's assets. She tells him to stop talking nonsense and focus on saving his own life. He insists that if she wants to save him, she must answer. She admits that with her previous preparations, she would only need a single day. He tells her to go and prepare, transferring 150,000 years immediately with more to follow. She just wants him to stay alive. He explains that if she recovers her family's wealth before the shadow assassins arrive, he'll be safe. She agrees, promising to return the favor with her entire heart. His other friends want to help too, refusing to just sit by. Marcus looks at his two geniuses and tells them he has a very specific plan in mind. He sends them to the mall to buy things for themselves, giving them 1,000 years each to spend within the hour. They wonder if this is some kind of final inheritance. He tells them not to be so dramatic. He urges them to just listen and follow the plan if they truly want to help save him. Deep down, Marcus knows he might have been a bit reckless this time. Whether he survives now depends entirely on how well those three can perform. We see them rush to the shops, tasked with spending 1,000 years in 30 minutes. They decide to split up and start buying everything in sight. They demand every luxury watch and designer item available. When the clerk asks why they need so much, they simply tell him it's for decoration. Finally, the shopping spree is over. Marcus notes with a smirk that the two girls actually have a natural talent for spending a fortune. The final 50,000 years arrive just in time. And so, the Real counterattack begins. The work begins with a single goal, to reclaim every single one of Sarah's family assets within the next 12 hours. The other family heads listen as a witness insists he is telling the truth. Marcus is a complete madman who has already killed the Whites. It seems Mr. White wasn't the wolf they expected, but more of a lapdog, and the other leaders are starting to feel the chill. Meanwhile, Sarah leads her trading team in a frenzy to buy back her heritage, though the rivals wonder how her meager savings could possibly be enough. They calculate that she would need at least 400,000 years to truly threaten them, a sum no one in Star City possesses besides the four families. One leader even jokes he'll eat his glass if such a person exists, only to be told Sarah has already seized 60% of her family's old assets. Their teams are failing, and as the reality of the situation sinks in, they demand to know where Marcus got the 200,000 years he used as a bribe. The tension rises as they confirm that Marcus personally dealt with the White family, leaving no room for doubt about his intentions. The order is given to deploy the shadow assassins, even as some wonder if Marcus is too powerful a figure to provoke so recklessly. But in Star City, the ruling families refuse to allow anyone to exist who might actually be more formidable than themselves. With only 2 hours left, Sarah pushes her team to reclaim everything regardless of the cost, while the rivals grow anxious over the lack of news. Marcus, however, remains perfectly relaxed, preparing for a milk bath and a custom meal as if he hasn't a single care in the world. His friends are less at ease, worrying about the impending shadow assassins and waiting for Marcus to give the signal to move. He instructs them to wait for his specific command before they burst through the windows, making sure they understand the plan perfectly. In a moment of strange levity, one friend reminds the leader of his fear of cockroaches, wondering what might happen if things go south. He jokes about what he'll leave for him if he's scared to death, just as a sudden disturbance suggests the shadow assassins might have arrived. The atmosphere shifts instantly as the threat becomes real, and they prepare to face the elite killer sent to end their streak. It seems the opposition has finally decided to stop talking and start acting, sending their most poisonous agents to settle the score. The shadows begin to move, closing in on the target with lethal precision. And now, we see if Marcus's gamble will truly pay off against the city's deadliest hunters. The assassins tell everyone to leave, though they aren't quite sure where they're supposed to go or why they should stop talking. They remind themselves they are professional killers, not some low-level street gang. Yet Mike can't help but feel a sudden sense of dread. He wonders if they're truly about to fail, but the leader tells him not to worry. It will be quick and painless, and the 200,000-year bounty is far too high to pass up. But as things take a turn, one of them realizes they've been led into a trap, cursing the fact that Sarah might have actually outsmarted them. Meanwhile, Sarah is urging her team to move faster, even as her staff frantically asks what is happening with their remaining resources. The news is grim. The four families have begun a massive counterattack, and with only 30,000 years left, Sarah orders them to throw everything they have into the fray regardless of the cost. She is desperate to reclaim her legacy, but deep down, her only real prayer is that Marcus stays safe through the night. She tells herself she has done exactly what he asked, hoping it will be enough to change their fate. Marcus, facing his own shadow, reflects that if there is a next life, he might try being a bit less reckless, just as his mysterious system suddenly grants him a permanent master-level combat skill. The notification arrives just as his friend, Jacob, startles him, prompting Marcus to decide it's finally time to deal with these uninvited guests once and for all. He activates the Combat Mastery card instantly, feeling the power surge through him as the system confirms his new status as a Grandmaster of Battle. And just like that, the time for talk is over. It is finally time for Marcus to claim his revenge. He engages the assassins with his new skills, and against all odds, the system calculates his survival probability as absolute. In the distance, the sirens of the police begin to wail, a constant, rhythmic reminder that the authorities are finally closing in on the chaos. Marcus looks at the fallen assassins with pure disgust, forcing one to admit the four families sent them before the man begs piteously for his life. He decides he might as well wipe out the four families while he's at it, just as Sarah arrives, relieved beyond words to find him unharmed. He teases her and the others for being crybabies, assuring them he's fine, but they insist he must flee immediately because the shadow assassins are coming for him. Marcus calmly asks them to let him go so he can go back to sleep, leading Sarah to promise she'll stay by his side if they can just survive this night. A sweet gesture, truly. He knows she's afraid of the dark, but he warns them that the assassins are already here, urging his friend Ryan to take the others and run before it's too late. When Marcus casually mentions he's already killed the assassins, they check his forehead for a fever, convinced he's just telling another one of his impossible tall tales. Marcus points out that the bodies are still lying right over there if they don't believe him, leaving Sarah to wonder just how many secrets he's been hiding. He asks Sarah to have someone clean up the mess, and while she agrees to handle it, Marcus calmly declares his intention to wipe out the four great families. Sarah is horrified, asking what he's planning, but he insists on ending the threat forever. She warns him that the families possess more time than he can possibly imagine. He tells her to trust him, promising that her family will soon rule the city alone, so she begins investigating how the rivals grew so powerful on her family's legacy. It turns out they've swallowed up every shop, facility, and bank in the city, with the four family heads personally holding vast fortunes in their own names. Marcus notes that each head has at least 1,000,000 years, totaling 4 million, which doesn't seem like much to him, but Sarah explains it isn't that simple. She warns that killing them would cause the city's entire economy and livelihood to collapse, though she admits she might already have a plan to prevent that. She estimates that with 8 to 10 million years, she could seize their industries. Marcus tells her he'll handle the 10 million, leaving the rest to her. With that settled, we see Marcus return to his own team, casually asking his employees what they think of the company so far. They praise him as the best boss in the world for the light workload and 4-day weekends, calling him a saint before he reveals why he called them in. He announces it's time for their permanent contracts, leading one eager staffer, Sophie, to joke about doing anything for him, even having his children. After a quick apology for the joke, Marcus gives them their final task. They must each find a way to spend 10,000 years within the next 2 days. The team is stunned, noting that even with 3 days and nights, they couldn't spend that much. But Marcus clarifies that it's 10,000 years per person. Sophie asks if he's serious about spending 10,000 a day, but Marcus tells her this is vital and asks if they can truly get it done in 24 hours. He explains the company's survival depends on it, and the team, realizing the stakes, vows to make sure the business continues by spending every second. They decide that being professional big spenders is easy enough, and so the great time-spending battle begins with a shopping spree at a luxury boutique. One of them points at the racks and demands everything except for a few select pieces, leaving the shopkeeper bowing in absolute delight at the windfall. Meanwhile, others are buying up digital assets and stocks by the thousands, making sure not to leave a single share behind for any retail investors. They've already bought 3 streets of shops and an entertainment center, but Sarah's assistant warns that their liquid time is dropping below 100,000. Marcus, however, knew she wouldn't disappoint him. Suddenly, 700,000 years arrive in his account from Sarah, with a promise of more to come. She promises to transfer more soon and tells him to take care of himself, ending her message with a cheerful sign-off. With the funds secured, Marcus watches as the multipliers begin to climb, reaching 85 and 90 times their original value.